So good morning, everyone, and welcome to another webinar brought to you by Dot. So across this series, different members of our team have been and will be covering a range of fascinating topics, all the way from global mosquito distribution and odor-based detection of disease and pests, all the way through to the bedbug challenges facing hospitality. So just a little bit of format before we get started. The webinar will be a short talk, 20 to 25 minutes, then followed by a brief Q&A session. So hopefully we'll wrap things up in about half an hour because I know everyone is really busy. So can I please encourage you all to post any questions you might have in the chat, and I can field those at the end. So without further ado, we'll get on to why we're all here. So I'm delighted to introduce Chris Rixson as our speaker for today's webinar, which is titled From Livestock Disease to Plant Stress, How Odor Signals Are Transforming Early Detection in Agriculture. So Chris is the Business Development Director here at DOT, and he's been with our company now for well over 8 years, and is passionate about supporting our mission to harness innovation and bring novel solutions to market, novel solutions which make a real impact to people's lives. So in his day-to-day role, Chris sits within Arctic Innovation, which is the contract research organization part of our business at DOT. So he works closely with our clients to navigate the complex world of R&D and product development to build existing partnerships with industry and co-develop and commercialize effective pest and vector control solutions. So I think that's my introduction. So without further ado, I'll pass over to Chris and he can talk us through his really interesting webinar. So thanks, Chris. Take it away.
Great. Thank you, Stephen. I will share my screen. And yeah, hopefully everyone can see that. So yeah, thank you. Thank you everyone for taking time to attend this webinar. I'm delighted to be here today, and I'm looking to kind of really use the next 20 to 25 minutes to explore the world of odour and how scent signals can help us better detect threats such as diseases and pests, particularly in an agricultural setting and also within animal health. I do hope you find this session to be thought-provoking. Hopefully it sparks some ideas of your own as to how odour can be applied for detection across other applications beyond what I touched upon today. Now, before I get into the detail of our kind of odour detection technology itself and specific use cases in agriculture, I wanted to just use the first part of this talk to take a step back and to look at why smell, or specifically volatile odour compounds, VOCs, is a powerful but underutilized data set. You smell. Now, you've probably not joined many webinars where the speaker starts off by telling his audience that they smell, but here we are, and hopefully it pays off. I smell too. Every single one of us smells, some more than others. Now, typically, smell has a bad reputation. We instantly think of it as a horrible sensation. Pungent, foul, stench, all negative words with negative connotations. But the truth is, you do smell, all of you. And it's not just humans. Animals smell, plants smell. The world around us is a swirling soup of smells. But what if we thought about smell differently and how we can actually harness it? Well, that's exactly what we're doing here at DOT. Smell is data, and it is powerful. Every living organism is live streaming right now, emitting code containing information about itself, and we don't even really know it. Smell is often thought as the sort of poorer cousin to some of our other senses, taste, sight. But the truth is, we use smell a lot already. We can smell danger, fire, smoke. We smell when our food has gone off. I'm sure we've all done the sniff test on milk before we use it. Some say we can smell fear based off our sweat. When mating, we subconsciously avoid people who smell genetically similar to us to avoid inbreeding. The ability to smell provides a rich and quantifiable signal, and that in itself can act as a biosensor, as a biomarker. Now, take a moment to think of a bad smell. How about cheesy feet, a part of our body that is particularly attractive to mosquitoes or dog poo. Humans have likely evolved to be disgusted by certain smells to avoid getting ill. There is bacteria, viruses, and other nasty things in poo that can make you ill. We've clearly evolved to avoid it, and for good reason. I won't labour the point much more today, but the fact is, smell carries messages. And that smell is not just in poo or cheesy feet. It is elsewhere and all around us in our body odour. But it isn't easy to decode what smell is telling us. Smell is a complex mix of chemicals. As humans, we produce hundreds of different volatile chemicals coming off our body through the sweat we release, our skin cells, and through bacteria that lives on our skin. Tens to hundreds of quintillions of molecules per day. And that is a lot of data. Now, most of that is noise. But hidden in that chemical noise are distinct statistical patterns correlating to biological or environmental processes. So to decode smells, we don't necessarily look at the individual compounds, but rather we look at relative ratios, the amount of chemicals relative to each other within that complex mixture. And that's where we start to see the differences. Have you ever walked into a room with an ill person and you feel like you can smell them? Perhaps you open a window. Subconsciously, you may well be detecting their illness. And this isn't something that's new as a concept. For hundreds of years, we have known that when you are infected with a disease, your body odor will change. And in fact, physicians used to use that as a way of diagnosing patients. It's well documented that tuberculosis can cause a person's breath to smell foul, like stale beer. Typhoid fever is reported to smell like baked bread, and people with yellow fever smell like a butcher's shop. The truth is, there are so many diseases and health conditions that have an odour that you can't actually fit them all onto one slide. And it doesn't just stop there. It's not just the human body emitting smells. We can also tell things about our environment using smell. Really, the whole planet is talking. And this isn't a landscape, it's what we call a smellscape. So how do we unlock this hidden world of odour? What if the future of our health and biosecurity is data that has been right under our nose all this time? Well, as humans, our sense of smell is fairly inferior. We have around 6 million olfactory cells, so we can't really rely on it. But there is an animal that we can, and that is dogs. In contrast to humans, dogs have around 300 million olfactory cells. The dog's smelling part of its brain is 40 times greater than ours. In fact, a dog can detect the equivalent of a teaspoon of sugar in 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools. That's pretty impressive. And as if smell is not enough of a superpower, dogs have the ability to learn smells. I'm sure we've all seen dogs deployed at airports, sniffing out contraband such as drugs and explosives. Well, they can also be trained to detect disease. During the pandemic, DOT, our company, actually worked with a fantastic charity, Medical Detection Dogs, based in Milton Keynes in the UK, to successfully demonstrate that COVID-19 has a distinguishable odour which can be accurately detected by trained dogs. So can dogs work? Yes. Is it sustainable? Yes. But is it scalable? No. So we must turn to a different animal, the insect. Nature's biosensor. Whereas humans can smell in parts per million and dogs in parts per billion, the insect can smell in parts per trillion. So they're very good at detection. But just how good? Well, let me give you a quick example. When you have malaria, or when someone is infected with malaria, you are more attractive to mosquitoes. Why? Because the mosquito is picking up on that change in your body odour with their antenna. This has been proven in published research by our CEO and co-founder at DOT, Professor James Logan. However, the challenge remains is decoding what that odour signature is for malaria or any other disease target, which is actually a very, very difficult thing to do. But insects have developed a way to do it. But of course, we can't put a lead on a mosquito, and we know that dogs aren't scalable. So the next question becomes, how can we learn from nature and build machines that can do the same job? Insects have tiny but incredibly powerful brains when it comes to identifying smells. So if we could mimic how the insect brain works, particularly how they process and recognize smells, then could we teach machines to also detect and identify odors with the same level of precision as an insect? Well, gas sensor technology has existed for a long time, but has lacked this insect brain. This is mainly because the computing power just has not existed to enable us to interpret smells. Well, that is until AI and artificial intelligence. In recent years, suddenly AI has become more accessible, and now at DOT, we're using AI to replicate the neural networks found in the insect's brain to learn and process scent data and work out that precise ratio of chemicals for a specific target, whether that's a disease or a pest. Now, why is this important? Well, there are a lot of chemicals that come off our body. For example, these chemicals may also be the same chemicals that a cow produces, but we don't smell like cows. And that's because those chemicals are in low amounts, and the ones that signify human, well, they're in higher amounts. So it's those ratios of chemicals that we look for, and that is what AI can now help us to work out much more efficiently and much more quicker than ever before. And with machine learning, we can now continuously improve the accuracy of detection of our sensor technology on different targets. So essentially, we now have a platform technology that enables us to develop sensor-based odor detection devices that work very much like an insect's brain. Through odor sample collection, analytical chemistry, and other proprietary methods that we developed at DOT, our sensor technology can be trained to detect different disease targets. By decoding that unique odor biomarker, we can detect early stage illness in real time, pre-symptomatic or asymptomatic, low-level infections, in very much a kind of non-invasive way with extremely high sensitivity and specificity. And the same principles means odor can also be used as a biomarker to detect nuisance pests and pathogens for monitoring and surveillance purposes. Now, up to now, much of the examples I've given have kind of related to human diseases and conditions. And there are some clear use cases for public health, whether that's through our previous work detecting malaria, funded by the Gates Foundation, or more recently, where we've been working in Singapore to detect odor associated with dengue infection on humans. But the same principles of odor detection apply to so much more than just humans and human diseases. And now we're starting to look at how we can exploit this in different ways across different sectors. And so now I want to take a closer look at where we see some exciting applications for this technology within agriculture and animal health. Odor plays a fundamental role in agricultural ecosystems in many different ways. Much like in humans, the odor profile of a host, whether that's a plant or an animal, can change in response to disease or environmental stress. Some plants can actively recognize what is attacking them and change their smell accordingly, enacting almost a my enemy's enemy is my friend strategy. For example, caterpillar attacks on certain plants can then trigger the release of an odor that's attractive to parasitic wasps to then attack the caterpillars. And as I've alluded to earlier when talking about our malaria research, pathogens can also manipulate the host odor to enhance their own transmission. In agriculture, we've seen that viruses such as the potato leaf roll virus and the barley yellow dwarf virus alter the VOCs released by infected plants. That makes them more attractive to aphids, and these aphids act as the virus vector. Pheromones then add another layer of chemical communication on top of all of this. Pheromones are produced by organisms to communicate with members of the same species. It plays a key ecological role, but importantly, pheromones can also be exploited for pest monitoring and management, which I'll come on to more shortly in a moment. So together, plant volatiles, insect pheromones, and other odour cues kind of play a key role in determining pathogen and disease transmission. And if we can harness this smellscape, this can really help us to improve kind of disease detection and pest management in agriculture. Now, a lot of research has already been conducted by one of my own colleagues here at DOT, Dr. Sarah Dewhurst. These were during her time at Rotherstead Research. And really, Sarah was looking at kind of understanding how a plant's natural defences can be stimulated to release VOCs in response to attack by pests or pathogens. But can we take this a step further? For example, develop and deploy sensor-based devices in greenhouses that detect pest attacks based on the changes that occur in plant odour. And it isn't just pest attacks that we can identify using odour detection. We know plants will respond to other forms of stress, such as disease or drought, through a change in its odour, long before it's noticeable to the human eye through other visual signs such as yellowing leaves or wilting. So these devices can also be set up to monitor for the odour biomarker associated with a target disease or drought stress early and before other visual symptoms occur on the plant. Together, these devices could act as an early warning network for pest-borne, fungal, bacterial, and viral crop infections, alerting growers before yield or quality is affected. And such application may not be confined just to the closed space of greenhouses. Could we eventually see sensors attached to agricultural robots or directly onto tractors and other machinery running down tram lines in open fields, monitoring the air coming off crops? I highlighted earlier as well how we can detect pest attacks on plants by detecting the change in plant odour, but we can also look at detecting the smell of the pest itself. Our technology platform allows us to identify unique odour biomarkers of a target pest species. For example, the major pests of stored grain. We can then use this biomarker to accurately detect and control these pests. A pest monitoring device could take the form of a room-based device that sits within a stored grain silo, continuously monitoring the air for the presence of an odour biomarker of a target pest, detecting it early before the grain produce is spoiled and significant yield losses occur. Or sensor technology can then be added into monitoring traps used by agronomists or farmers, for example, out in open fields. We could use an attractant to draw in the target pest into the trap, and then the sensor can then smell that unique odour biomarker of the target pest. Detection alerts from the device can then be sent directly to the agronomist or the farmer, so intervention can begin promptly. By using odour as a form of detection in this way, compared to other methods such as visual IDing, pests can be quickly detected with high sensitivity and specificity, and importantly, at low levels before a full infestation can take hold. The data from these devices can also help us to track and predict wider infestation trends to enable more proactive pest control and pest management in agriculture. The attractant in the device can also harness odour. We can replicate natural pheromones produced by insects or replicate a host odour that we know that the target pest is naturally attracted to. A great example where we've done this at DOT is with bedbugs. Our scientists discovered the chemical composition of the aggregation pheromone of bedbugs and then developed a unique formulation embedded in tiny beads that delivers a controlled, long-lasting release of the attractant technology. This attractant then powers the bedbug monitoring trap, and then with smart capabilities to be added, alerts can then be sent to hotel managers when a bedbug is first detected and before full infestation can occur in the hotel room. This means treatment is quicker, cheaper, as the bedbug infestation hasn't spread within that room and into other rooms in the hotel. But it isn't only bedbugs that we can identify through its unique odour biomarker. Our work at DOT has seen us successfully detect other pest species: cockroaches, clothes moths, silverfish, grain weevils, even bacteria. So imagine potentially a device in the future that's capable of detecting the presence of a single thrip in the greenhouse. This could be the future for pest management in agriculture, unlocked by the power of odour and odour detection. And now, to start to wrap things up, let's also look at how odour detection can play a role in animal health. Just as with humans, the body odour of animals will change when infected with disease, and this is also detectable. At DOT, for example, we've shown that blue tongue infection has a unique and detectable odour, working with partners such as the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine and Purbright Institute. Now, imagine a non-invasive tool for early and fast detection of diseases and infections in high-value animals such as cattle. This could take the form of either a point-of-care handheld device used by vets and farmers to screen cattle for target diseases routinely or when they first enter a farm, or it could be in the form of a wearable device that constantly monitors the health of the animal based off of changes in its odour. But it's not just cattle where we see application for odour detection. It can also be applied for birds. In fact, here at DOT, we have a really exciting project working with the Scottish Government to support conservation efforts with seabirds, specifically puffins. One of the really difficult things about puffins is knowing how well they're doing. They're a bird at risk, particularly from climate change, and typically conservationists have to monitor puffin populations by travelling out to very remote islands, usually in poor weather, sticking their arm down a burrow, which can be several metres underground, to feel for a bird. This is quite a difficult, challenging and an invasive method. So at DOT, we've done a lot of work to support these conservational efforts. We've collected puffin odour from feathers and demonstrated that puffins do have a unique odour that is detectable. And now we're building a device that will look to extract air from the burrow to confirm if a puffin is present and enters into the burrow. And we can look at other things as well, whether there's a chick in the burrow, and soon we might even be able to detect threats to the puffin. And that could be, for example, if a rat is present in the burrow, or potentially even avian flu, bird flu. So yeah, the same principle of odour detection can then be used to enable early, non-invasive diagnosis of avian flu and other zoonotic diseases directly in farms or poultry houses using these sensor-based devices. Real-time air monitoring can signal when a flock is showing early signs of infection, or even down to one individual bird, days before symptoms arise, if any symptoms at all arise. And this can support kind of rapid isolation, treatment, and containment. Really, we feel like this technology kind of promises to enhance biosecurity and improve animal welfare and protect farmers' livelihoods. So, to conclude, odour is not just a smell. We really do believe it's one of the greatest uncharted data domains in biology and medicine. And at DOT, we're hugely excited by its potential across different sectors and in different applications, whether that's public health, agriculture, animal health. We see real value in early detection of pests and diseases, and odour is the key to unlocking this. And just before I finish off, it would be remiss of me not to highlight all of the other exciting areas that DOT as a company is involved in. Firstly, as I've sort of touched on today, there's product innovation, so specifically our odour sensing technology, targeting different pests and different diseases across pest control, public health, agriculture and animal health. There are opportunities for partners, whether that's industry or academic institutions, to collaborate with us to bring new odour-based solutions to market. And this can be through a co-development model via our DOT Discovery model. Then there's our ArcTech Innovation CRO part of the business, where we offer efficacy testing and consultancy to support our industry clients to get pest and vector control products to market. And finally, DOT already have a product on the market. I alluded to this earlier, and that's the BugSense Sentry Pro. So that's an analog bed bug detection device that's for professional pest controllers. So thank you for listening. I'd love to connect with people after this webinar to hear ideas and suggestions of where else we could be applying Odour for early detection that brings real value and impact, whether that's in agriculture or other sectors. Thank you.